going to these HIIT classes and creating all this cortisol, this pool of cortisol and increased hunger. And especially if you're female and your hormones during this age bracket are not quite the same. And so the last thing you want to do is go and jump into these HIIT classes and just create more stress on your body, right? But it's kind of what we've always been taught to do, right?
Rick Mayo, welcome back to the Future of Fitness.
Eric, I'm so excited to be back. I was telling someone this morning, so I'm out of town. So I was telling somebody this morning that I think this is my third, maybe my fourth time on the podcast. And they're like, wow, 4 times. I'm like, well, Eric's a really cool guy. So sometimes we just like catch up, and why not film it as we do so?
No, it's
like a filmed catch up.
It is. I think it's 3rd or 4th. I'm not really sure exactly, but I try to get you on once a year because I always learn a lot too. And I just really enjoy the conversations. And, as the numbers show, people like the conversations as well. So, give the people what they want. Isn't that what they say, Rick?
That's right. That's right.
Oh man. So let's get caught up. It has been about a year. I didn't check the exact date of our last publishing, but I think it's been probably closer to a year and a half. I mean, you've been busy. Alloy's still growing. You still got great names like Mark Fisher coming on board and people like that. So yeah, give us an update. What's new and good?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it's still moving at a pretty good clip. As far as I understand, we may be, again, this might be a false claim, but I think from what I've heard that we might be the fastest growing fitness franchise, period. Hard to dead stop. So it's like, that would be interesting. It doesn't really matter. It's kind of like, I always laugh at Elon Musk's post when he was the wealthiest man in the world several years ago. And he posted it. And then he put, isn't that interesting? ... back to work. And that's kind of how we feel. It's like, there's so much left to be done, so many people to help and so many entrepreneurs to develop and those types of things. So, but yeah, we're up to 335 or so locations awarded, which is sold for the, in franchising, you say awarding because you're choosing, it's a double vetting process. And we have over 100 open or in pre-sale right now. And so our pace is about 5 or 6 clubs opening per month. And our budget for this year was to award another 100 locations, but the Q1 was crazy. It was like nearly 20 in January, and February was big, March was big. So it's moving a lot faster than our budget, which is fine. Obviously, we budget conservatively, and if we can grow quicker than that with integrity, then we'll do it. So yeah, man, it's a tiger by the tail for sure, but it's a ton of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, it's, it only took you 35 years to get here, right?
It is funny. It seems like it just jumped off all of a sudden. It's been, it's so sudden. It's like, I feel a little bit guilty because quite honestly, it doesn't feel that difficult. And I don't mean that in a way, like it is difficult, but like when you've been doing it forever, it doesn't feel, the perception is it's not that difficult. But to your point, there certainly were plenty of difficult times in the prior 3 decades, right? And so you sort of earn your stripes, I guess, to get to a point where it doesn't feel that complicated or difficult. And so, 30-year overnight success, I guess.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's just business. It's never linear, right? You never get a linear growth. And one of the big questions I would have for you is, over that span of time, what gave you the confidence with that duration of timeline, right? Like, okay, this is taking longer than I thought. What gave you the confidence to like, no, this is the path. Like, we're going to stick to it. Like, this product is good. Like, this is a good product market fit. Our time is coming. Like, what kept you going?
I think first of all, I love the work. So it never really felt like work. Whether I was in college and opened my first gym when I was in college and I was working in it, 12 hours a day, that even didn't feel like work. And so I've never had a phase of any of this that felt like something I didn't want to wake up and do. So that part is easy to keep going when you actually enjoy the work, whether it's traveling all over the world. And, when we were doing our white labeled version licensing, or even now franchising, or just working in the gym. Like I said, none of those phases were something that I did not enjoy. Enjoying all of it really helps. And I don't think it was any real phase. I think, it reminds me of the old Bruce Lee quote, business does sometimes, where he was like when I first started doing martial arts, punch was a punch and a kick was a kick. And then I learned more, and it was like, whoa, there's angles and there's all these things going on, right? And he's like, but then once again, when I became, let's just say 3rd degree black belt, I'm not sure where we ended up. Once again, punch was a punch, a kick was a kick. So I think, over time, it does get simpler, right? You almost go back to reverting back to like the few main things. Like you can kind of zoom out from crop duster, how you look down and you're like, all right, here's the main thing. So we just put more juice here. And so I've enjoyed the work the whole time. And there's been iterations and phases that we've been through that led us to where we are. So as an example, like the white labeled version of what we did, 2,500 door fronts all over the world, right? From like cricket training centers in India or aqua training centers in Tasmania. I mean, you name it, all CrossFit, boutique fitness, Gold's Gym, Anytime Fitness, you name it, all these big brands that we had worked, lockstep with for all those years. It wasn't difficult to understand like how franchising worked or to identify a gap in the market. And did we have the right machine built to fill that gap? And we just had massive amounts of empirical evidence. So there was no I would love to say like a business savant. I looked and I could feel it. There was something coming. It's like, nah, it's just 30 years of observations, simple observations to say, okay, there's a gap in the market here to launch the franchise, which would be the 45 to 65-year-old age group. They hold 70% of the nation's disposable income. Not a bad group. They're somewhat insulated from the ups and downs in the economy, and they're quite honestly just underserved. And so they're easy to market to. They understand, you work really hard to make the message simple so that they understand it. And so far, so good. Like we've yet to go into a market where it was not well received. As a matter of fact, we've yet to go into a market, Eric, where during the pre-sale, we didn't produce enough leads to open, making money in any of the facilities. Now, operationally, some folks, they might lose a person or they stumble out of the blocks, then they get it together. Some people nail it right out of the gate, and in 5 weeks, they have a full facility. So there's extremes, of course. But yeah, I think just empirical evidence over time, and thankfully it's proved out to be what we thought. So, early innings, but so far so good with 100 open. So yeah, I don't know. There was no foresight. There was no plan to end up here. It just sort of, you've said it, put on a set of lenses, you do the daily work that's in front of you. And that way you can also, if you have that right lenses on, you can look for those opportunities, and you just have to have enough knowledge to be like, okay, is this a direction that we should go to? Every time we pivoted, there was a huge opportunity cost, right? Like moving from like a minor version of that was moving from a one-on-one personal training gym, ripping the Band-Aid off and changing all of our customers to this personal training in a small group, which is what we do now. And we've been doing it since year 2000, right? Well, we were doing 3,000 one-on-one sessions a month almost when we did that transition. So it was a risk, right? To leave a 2,500 door front licensing business to pursue franchising, which is really front end heavy and need a lot of capital to get from startup to what we call royalty sufficient, where your royalties are covering your base expenses, which we've been there for a minute, right? Which is great. So each one, I think the crux move was at least the faith that you had enough information to know that you could abandon something that was working really well to pursue something that might even be better, right? Which is not easy to do, but I think just tons of empirical evidence, really.
Wow. You mentioned that you haven't found a market yet that wasn't well received. Is there any, and you don't have to name the specific market, I don't want you to do that to a franchisee, but like, is there any types of markets where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work, you're a little nervous about it and it panned out? Like what were the ones where you're like, you're questionable at first?
We really haven't been there yet. And, we use the most advanced software that we have access to in franchising. We mapped out the lower 48, 150 major MSAs in the lower 48, which gave us a runway of like 860 locations. That was just home run locations. Think about that. And then last year alone, we mapped new locations and awarded them to franchisees. 40 locations just last year were not even mapped in the main grab that we did when we went through, right? And grabbed the real estate. But you can imagine if you have your archetype nailed, it's like their buying, shopping habits, their median household income, some of the basics, right? We've yet to go into a market because the avatar is the same, whether they're in Seattle or Long Island or San Diego or Miami. And those are the four corners, if you will, right? That we're in now. The avatar is the same. So there's no cultural differences. There's no socioeconomic differences. And so while some markets might be nuanced, the avatar is the same regardless. And so with those metrics, it's just math. It's an algorithm. So when we land in these markets, we've yet to have a market where it just wasn't good. I'll tell you, maybe a different answer to that would be some bright spots that we found. And some of the B markets that we're in do really, really well. So I'll give you an example. Like our franchisee of the year last year was from Greenville, South Carolina. It's like, it's a great city. It's got the economics to support 3 or 4 alloys. but it's a B market, right? It's not Atlanta with 7.5 million people. And so some of those markets like that do really well, mainly because, as you can imagine, your digital marketing goes a lot further. It's less expensive per lead. You get more leads, better quality, just because there's not as much noise on the channel, right? And so those markets are really, we've been very successful with. But again, the customer avatar is the same. Those markets just have way less noise going on. And sometimes because Alloy is a small number of people, 130 to 150, community based, that almost fits the profile of a city like a Greenville, small, tight knit community, right? Quality relationships. And so those markets have been really, really good for us. So it's not like the major metropolitan markets aren't good. It's that the B markets are surprisingly really good.
Yeah. I don't find that too surprising, really. I mean,
yeah. Well, with your knowledge, yeah, you're probably like, oh,
well,
got it.
I don't know about that. I don't know too much about franchise. I mean, I know a lot of franchisors, but Metabolic says the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're really strong in the B markets, and it tends to be their first choice. I mean, my words, not theirs. I want to talk in the actual fitness prescription, and that's something that you and I identified as a really cool talking point today. Man, I look at where most people are as far as consumers, and there seems to be a wellness fatigue, right? It's like everyone is told, like, okay, you got a sauna, you got a cold plunge, you got to get your sleep, you got to get your aura, you got to, carnivore, paleo, veggie, vegetarian, like you name it, like everyone's
carnio.
Like, everyone's just exhausted. Like they don't know what to do. Like what supplements should I be taking?
That's a great, yeah.
It's just true. And I feel like a lot of people are just kind of checking out. And I feel like people just need to settle down and get back to the fundamentals. And, similar to your Bruce Lee quote, which I love, anytime we can quote Bruce Lee on the show, it's an amazing day. But I call it the coach's journey, right? Which is like, and this is me, and I know a lot of people who are at the top, right? The Kelly Starretts and the Rob Wolfs and all these people. And they say the same thing. It's like when they first started, they're like, no, we just got to get people moving, right? And then you start down this educational, like for me, it was, I joke, it was CrossFit and paleo. If I could just get people doing CrossFit and eating paleo, I could solve all the world's problems. And as I started to learn more, like it was probably 5 years of like, oh God, but there's so much more to learn, and there's so much to nutrition, and there's all these different programming modalities, but what about the aerobic system? Are we training that? Like, right. And I just want to burn it all down and start over again. And then you come back after years and years on that journey, you come back to, like, we just need to get people to drink more water. We get them to move 3 times a week, get enough sleep. And it's just fundamental, right? And that's what most people need. So when you look at like the modern fitness prescription, like where are you guys getting it right? Where do you think a lot of the market may be a little off target?
Yeah, I think, when you look at the modern prescription, there's plenty of experts to your point. There's no lack of information out there these days, which can be maddening at times. And, people are worried about getting an NAD drip when they really just don't even eat healthy food. It's like, okay, let's not focus on that so much. I was talking to some guys about business the other day, and they're a group of high level entrepreneurs. You have to have a certain threshold of net worth to get in the group. And they were doing the same thing, and I'm like, it was about business. Some of them are Elo franchisees. So like, what about this? What about that? And like, look, hold on. And they're all into their health big time. And I was like, this is a bit like talking about cold plunges and NAD drips when you haven't even started strength training, right? Like that's what you guys are doing in this business. So we all got to chuckle out of that, but it's true. And so everybody got it right away because to your point, everyone's observing the same thing. And so I think empirically, we've always known that strength first is a good option for most people. Certainly if you're over 30, you're suffering from some level of sarcopenia, which is just muscle loss essentially. And so that becomes a really big driver for your longevity as your lean tissue, your strength, right? Your balance, your mobility, all those things are tied to just being a little bit stronger, right? And so we've known that. But now if you really follow, say, Peter Attia, right? Again, can those guys get in the weeds? Sure. But when you have the foremost anti-aging clinic in the world, and he was an oncologist who went into the financial realm, made a bunch of money, came back to medicine as sort of early retired and was like, I don't want to be on the sick side. I want to be on the prevention side. So he starts essentially the foremost anti-aging clinic in the world. And essentially the prescription is dead on currently with what we would prescribe and have always prescribed, which is essentially strength first. So let's just zoom out a bit. It's like, okay, how much do I need to exercise? How about that? Like you and I are sitting down with a third party that knows nothing about exercise, right? How much do I need to exercise? It's like, well, You could do as little as 3 days a week, or maybe I'm already exercising this much a week. Okay. That's a different person. Well, what should I be doing? It's like, okay, if you're not exercising at all, you could do anything. And I'm a fan. You can walk, you can do a class, you can watch something on YouTube and follow along. Anything is better than nothing. Just move, right? Then you make it to this next category, which is, look, I'm working out this many hours a week or minutes. What should I be doing? And so then you're starting to talk about, how should I allocate my time for the most effective use of that time and to get the ideal desired result? And so first and foremost, it has to be strength based, which is surprising. So I think you had asked as part of this question, where have we been? And I think for whatever reason, we've developed this idea that it matters how hard you work during the session. Like, it's an effort based measurement. And you look at the rise of, say, like a brand like Orange Theory, when they hit the market right at the time that wearables became really popular. And then they rebranded a calorie from like a calorie to a splat point, right? It's cool. It's rebranded. And then you jump into class and you stare at the board and you try to see who gets the most splat points, right? So it's basically like, I'm going to sort of segment this hour of time and I'm going to try to burn as many calories as I can. Well, we knew at the time, like, well, that's not really, if it's 2 or 3 days a week, that's great, but that's not really the ideal way to exercise. What you're trying to do is set up an ecosystem for health and wellness, right? And so going in and doing a HIIT class, if you will, is kind of puts you in this no man's land. You're really not strength training and traditionally in a way to increase your strength, right? Because the weights have to be light because you're moving. And while your heart rate's getting up, you're not getting it high enough to get the benefits of sort of increasing your VO2 max. And so you're kind of in this no man's land, right? And that's what most boutique class-based fitness is. It's this metabolic training. A lot of folks will claim like we do strength training, but if you're doing it in a circuit with the clock, I promise you it's turning into a cardio class, whether you like it or not, right? And so strip all that away. That's been the modern trends. Now you're seeing people kind of move away from that. Now you look at like maybe an Orange Theory still off a significant amount as a brand. Well, one of the reasons is like that sort of mentality, or what we're measuring is no longer in vogue, if you will, right? Even from a hard science standpoint. So strength first, then you look at cardio. Okay, how many days of strength? 2 is enough. Do full body training. 2 is enough. 3 is ideal. And somewhere in that 2 to 3 is you're probably working out for 30 to 45 minutes, right? 30 minutes, you're probably having to push it really hard. 45, 50 minutes, maybe a couple of days a week would be enough. 3 would be ideal. That would be the prescription. And that, again, is traditional strength training. You do a set, you might move over and do a lighter exercise, but you're not running around the room on the clock trying to get hot and sweaty. That's not the goal of strength training. So check. Now you say, okay, what about my cardiovascular activity, right? It's like, well, let's just use the terms that Peter Attia uses. If you've got a zone of effort from 1 to 5, 1 is nothing. 2 is something that you're mildly winded, but you could do it all day long. So say you and I threw on at our fitness level, a ruck pack and just went on a 1 hour brisk walk, right? That would be like a zone 2 example. Maybe it's a pedal on a bike, a steady pedal on a bicycle. For some people, it might just be walking. Other people, it might be a light jog. Depends on their cardiovascular fitness. That's where we should spend the bulk of our time in working on our cardiovascular activity. So for most of clients, certainly in Alloy Avatar, that's just going to be walking. So it's like a step goal, right? And we have an app that pulls in wearables. Almost everyone has a mechanism. I saw your Aura ring. You can have an Apple Watch. You can have any of the fitness watches, Fitbit, Garmin, any of those can do this. And you just measure your steps. Heck, you can just have your phone in your pocket does the same thing, right? So get some steps every day. If you look at these blue zones all around the world, Eric, they're not doing HIIT training, right? They just walk to town and hang out with friends and they garden and they're just generally more active. I saw one that was really interesting on Sardinia, and they've got a centurion population there that's pretty strong. And by the way, the diet in all these areas is completely different. So like, what is it? Well, it's probably a confluence of a lot of things, but one of the mains is they're just moving a lot. And they found that the longevity was longer in the villages in Sardinia that were steeper. So the ones that were further into the mountains. And they profiled some folks in their hundreds who walked to church every day. But you imagine if you're in a really steep town, you got to walk uphill, to get to this church, and you're doing it once or twice a day. It's like, it's just more strenuous as an example, right? So you're getting better exercise. So just moving, right? So let's get you moving more. Strength training 2 to 3 days a week. move more, set a step goal. I think the threshold that they speak about now is making a difference about 7,000 steps a day. You can think about it in a mileage standpoint. That's probably 3 or 4 miles. That might be a lot for a beginner, but that's what you would aspire to get to, right? And you could, by the way, it's just steps. It doesn't have to be put together as one long exercise, but it's really, really good for your heart health. So good, zone 2 cardio. And eventually, look, you might start out doing 10 minutes a day because that's your threshold, right? But eventually you have to pay the piper, and you want to build up to about 3 hours a week total of this zone 2 cardio. So then there's zone 3, 4, and then there's zone 5. And zone 5 would be described as something that you could only do for about 3 minutes maximum. That means you're sort of getting on maybe an air bike or something like that, and you're pushing yourself so hard that you cannot physically make it past 3 minutes at that effort level, right? That would be zone 5. And that's really important for your VO2 max. And so that is in some ways also a predictor of longevity and of overall health. I mean, you've got strength on the other end, right? Which is grip strength or hanging strength, or how far you can carry things. There's all these measures that people like to cite, but I think just general strength. And on the other end, you got your VO2 max. So how healthy is your heart at the high end? And then zone 2 is just general heart health. Great. Well, then we have this gap here that we don't talk about, which is zone 3, 4, which Peter Attia would describe it as the garbage zone. Now, again, we're not talking about that versus sitting on the couch eating potato chips. We're talking about, I'm planning the exercise. How should I allocate my time? 3, 4 zone is where you see most of that boutique fitness going, right? Because I'm certainly higher than a zone 2. I couldn't do that forever, but I'm also not at zone 5 because the class is 45 minutes and I have to survive it, or an hour, right? And so I power down from max effort, and I'm also going too hard to get the heart health benefits of zone 2. So again, is it better than nothing? Yes. But again, it's in Peter Attia's words described as the garbage zone. So when you peel all that back, when I look at that and I'll compare that to Alloy as a brand, it's like, listen, we do strength first. And then at the end of every workout, there's always some type of metabolic finisher for 2 to 4 minutes, done at your level. Get your heart rate as high as you can with like max effort, right? So in its bare essence, if you just went to a brand like Alloy that was doing those 2 components, that's 2 of the 3 things you need to do from an exercise standpoint. And again, not to oversimplify it, but to our earlier point, maybe we should, right? So strength training, yeah, check. I got my heart rate up. And again, those intervals, by the way, that zone 5 to back up to that point, it doesn't have to be for long. You could do 10 minutes a week total and you're fine, right? Maybe even less. It's just about the effort and getting your heart rate that high. Strength training, if you come in twice a week, you get that. You get 2 days a week that you're getting 2 to 4 minutes of really, really high heart rate. Check. So you got your zone 5, you got your strength. Though the gap, what is it? Zone 2. So, again, we'll give you homework. Like we want you to get out and walk. Most people can do that on their own. Go walk in the park, right? And we have an app that can pull in wearables and track those and hold people accountable to those steps. That's it. Just from an exercise standpoint. Now you could get more nuance, like what kind of strength training, what type of exercises, and certainly we can dig into that. But at the highest level, if someone's listening and they're like, I need to start exercising, how should I allocate my time? Just keep in mind, as a country or as a society, we've really leaned into like, I have to get out there and sweat my butt off, right? I have to get out there and create this Herculean effort. And there may be some self-efficacy and feeling like you really did something, but it may not be the best use of your time. Start with strength, start walking more, eventually work in some type of metabolic training. And so it's not that complicated. I know that's an oversimplification, but I don't know if you're seeing the same things on your end, Eric, but 100 clubs open and rolling, all the empirical evidence of the corporate clubs we've owned in the past and people we've worked with, it produces the best results, certainly in the customer avatar that we target that can get a little bit beat up, as you get a little older. So going to these HIIT classes and creating all this cortisol, this pool of cortisol and increased hunger, and especially if you're female and your hormones during this age bracket are not quite the same. And so the last thing you want to do is go and jump into these HIIT classes and just create more stress on your body, right? But it's kind of what we've always been taught to do, right? Work out on an empty stomach, work out as hard as you can, burn fat, fast, do all these things. It's like, okay, maybe, but if you strip all that away, the people that are most successful, strength, move more, every now and then get your heart rate up really high.
Yeah. I mean, and even, Dr. Stacey Sims has really shed a light, especially on that,
I was just going to mention Stacey Sims.
40 to 55-year-old age bracket for women, and how you have to be very careful with the type of training that you do. And not careful, you just have to have a different mindset. And I can imagine a lot of people listening right now are doing the whatabouts. Yeah, Rick, what about XYZ? What about da da da, right? I mean, what about lactate threshold or aerobic capacity training? Like that's all fun to talk about, right? And
well, that's great if you're a cyclist,
right.
if you live in Whitefish, Montana, like you do, Eric, and you want to do you want to cruise down to Colorado and do the Leadville 100 bike race or run, you need to train for that. But that doesn't mean that's healthy per se. That's a sport, right? It's like competing at the CrossFit games. It's probably going to hurt. You're probably going to get dinged up, right? Doesn't mean CrossFit wholesale is bad. Just means at a competitive level, same thing with like cardio exercise. You're going to do some things that aren't necessarily the healthiest, which I know sounds counterintuitive because you see a triathlete or an endurance athlete and they're healthy, sure. But I guarantee you they have some nagging injuries or something's going on, right? And so to your point, yes, what about? There's a million of those. And if you have a specific goal to run a 10K at a certain time, train for that. That's a sport. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the majority of people who either aren't exercising or a bit confused about what to do when they exercise. That's the people that we're talking about. That includes me, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, me too. And when I owned a CrossFit gym and I did CrossFit, fairly consistently and pretty hard for about 9 years. And I always joke, I only got injured once. It just kept moving around my body. It was, I always had this, I always had this conversation with people as they were joining the gym. I'm like, I just want you to understand that we're talking about two different things. And we're talking about CrossFit as a sport over here, which you see on TV, probably, on most of your social media. And then you see CrossFit for health and fitness, general health and fitness. And they're completely two different things. Like we're going to train you over here on the health and fitness side. And if you ever want to get into the sports side, understand that it's not healthy. Like they're pushing themselves. Like a lot of them have gut issues. There's going to be nagging injuries. You're going to have a lot of cortisol spike. Like there's just a lot of unhealth, but it's sport. And that's what you do. There's a sacrifice. There's a price for admission when you go there,
right.
But not everyone should do it. And that was really hard because, in a CrossFit class, the competition, no matter what, drives people to do things outside. It was really hard to prescribe that type of thing. Like I almost had to always prescribe like every minute on the minute sessions or, very specific, tempo training for weightlifting, like get very, very specific and really have our coaches train well to say like, we're not redlining today. Like everybody stop and repeat what I just said. We're not redlining today, yet someone's going to redline, right? That's just the way it's going to be. So,
when we were writing programs for people, we observed the same thing. So we've never been fans of class-based concepts. Like, we go up to 6, it's personal training. We just figured out a way to scale it a bit and make it less expensive for the consumer, a little bit more fun. There's some sociability to it. Great. But it's really one-on-one training just done in a group setting. Well, the other end of the spectrum, again, in these classes, when we were writing programs for clubs all over the world, some people would hire us to write class-based concepts for them. So we could do it. We could write the programs and tell them how to sell it and do all the things. And which means we felt like with integrity, we had to practice it, right? So we expanded our facility and had an area and a whole membership dedicated to something that we quite honestly didn't even believe in, because it's like, well, we're building these things. We better have some people coming through that we can practice on to make sure that it works. And I tell you, your observations are so true. One of the things I always tell people is like in a class-based setting, even if you're the best coach in the world and you have somebody in there with a shoulder injury and you tell them like, hey, when you get to this station here, because you're normally on the clock or EMOM, like you said, or whatever, it's like there's a bit of urgency to it in a class-based setting. And we tell them when you get to this exercise, don't do the overhead press, do this modified thing. And then sure enough, you would look over when they were there and they'd be doing the thing you told them not to. And as you start to understand the psychology of it, it's like, well, yeah, they don't want to feel like an oddball, right? They don't want to be the weird person that has to do something different. They want to be able to keep up with the class. So they would ignore your advice and their injury and do something. And then sure enough, it would aggravate that shoulder. And even though you told them, the environment didn't really allow you to control it, right? You just couldn't, no matter what you tried to do or what you said.
Yeah, I always woke up in the mornings and I had this inner conflict of like, I have to trick my clients into doing the right type of training. And that was like,
I love it.
That's just, that can't be right. Do I really have to do this? Do I really have to like, mask this up and paint it in a picture that it's, what they think is CrossFit, but it's really just trying to be good training. And anyway, I was very conflicted. And that was part of the coach's journey, right? As I went through all this training and then by the end of my gym ownership days, I was like, people need to strength train and drink more water and eat whole foods, right?
Exactly.
I want to get your thoughts on, we're sitting here in Q2 of 2025 already. There's a new administration in the White House. Seems to be a new focus nationally on the country's health. Whether that be, the appointment of RFK Jr. or, seeing a lot of people in the private sector coming in, to speak their mind. I mean, the thirst for consumer wellness knowledge is at a high point that I've never seen before. So when you look at the whole environment of our country's health and wellness, like, do you think we're at a serious inflection point right now? I mean, you can throw in technologies and GLP-1s and all that stuff. It just seems like everything is really converging right now. Like, what do you think about the next 3.5 years? Do you think we're going to see something special and different, or you think it's going to be more of the same?
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, from a timing perspective for our franchise, we've been very fortunate that what we've known empirically is now like top of mind for an average consumer, right? People do have wearables and they're hearing things about sleep quality. And you joked about some of the fringe things, cold plunge, saunas, NAD drips, all the things. That's typically on the fringe, I think, of what we see. But yeah, I think the awareness and look, it does get over politicized. So it's like you always run the risk of stepping in it when you do talk about anything around anything these days. But I don't think there's anyone out there who would disagree with the fact that like improving our food quality is a bad idea. I mean, why is it that you can go to Europe and eat pasta and your stomach is fine and you eat it in the States and you feel terrible? It's like, I don't know, maybe they have, 700 ingredients, I think they agreed upon a long time ago. Fast forward to today, it's still 700 ingredients that they allow. The US started with that same agreement. Now we're at like 10,000 ingredients, right? So it's like, it's just not hard to figure out how we got here, right? And granted, you got to feed a lot of people. So it's not always a bad thing, right? You can get easy calories. Probably the first time historically that, we have too many calories, right? And it takes discipline not to be overweight. It's been a very short window of time, even in the last century, that's even an issue or ever would be, right? So I think as a backlash to that or a reaction, yes, I think it's a really good thing. I think we're going to see more awareness around health. I wish we could not politicize it so that half the country was not turning their backs on being healthy because it meant that they were associated with a certain political party. That seems ridiculous to me, but that's kind of where we are politically. If we can get past that, and I think that we will, then yeah, I think we're in for a really good run of paying attention with all of these measurables, to our overall health. I mean, you can buy a glucose monitor now and you can measure everything that you eat. Will tell you, and everybody's different, right? Some people eat sushi and their glucose shoots through the roof. Some people eat steak and it goes up. It's really interesting, right? So it's hard to sift through all of that, but I think all of it is good and it's all pointing us towards a healthier place. Look, you mentioned GLP-1s and we just did a podcast I have a 20% stakeholder that's been a partner of mine for 20 years, and she's our COO. So she's awesome. And she did GLP-1s, and she was brave enough to come on and talk to me about it on our podcast. Cause, you could get a little bit of the elitist, like, especially in the fitness realm. It's like, oh, you're cheating, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Is it easier to lose 50 pounds? Is it better, healthier to lose 50 pounds with a little bit of GI distress than it is to, take this injection? Look, who knows long term, but at least early indications are that it's not that bad. It's not as bad as people are making it out to be. And there's dose amounts that, are certainly way healthier. And as we're seeing, it's like, maybe even there's some ancillary benefits for, mitigating cravings for cigarettes or alcohol or, like staving off dementia. I mean, who knows, right? And who knows who's driving the studies, as you know, but it's not all bad. And I think it's a very limited view to say like it's cheating. It's a shortcut. It's like, who cares, right? So then you look at, well, if it's here to stay, right? And there are some negative effects of it. One of them, which is when you lose weight really quickly, regardless of the mechanism. Let's face it, GLP-1 is just a peptide that blunts your hunger at the end of the day, right? In its bare essence. And so if in fact that has you eating less, it would be no different than some of the diets you mentioned before, or like Atkins or paleo, or it's just a massive calorie reduction, which results in relatively rapid fat loss, or weight loss. Well, if you listen to, again, the experts, they will say, we will not allow our patients to be on GLP-1s unless they do strength training, right? And so strength training mitigates the biggest downside of rapid weight loss because of these drugs, which is loss of muscle mass. And that's what you don't want, right? Because that's your health. That's your engine. That's your structure. That's your balance. Look, there's molecules that in its ridiculous terms, like when you work out, your muscles squeeze out happy molecules that help your brain. That's the least scientific way to describe it, but it is true. So it's like, let's do, even with GLP-1s, those aren't going anywhere, by the way, because, there's been some wild studies, as you've seen in the past, where people would give up 10 years of their life just to live the rest of it at their ideal weight. Sad, but true. So those drugs aren't going anywhere. And so can't beat them, join them. Not even that. It's like, well, is there some upside there if we start to mitigate some of the downsides, which people are already figuring out how to do that, adding things to the shots that includes something that helps with the GI tract and the negative side effects. Well, does your brand align? If you're a fitness person, do you align with that? Like if you're still telling people, come here and burn this many calories in an hour, you might be missed behind the eight ball because we've already controlled the calorie. We don't need to burn more, right? We've already controlled the calorie equation on the front end by taking something that is by default limiting our calories. So it's not about how many calories you burn on the back end. It's like, what does the exercise do for this ecosystem of our wellness, right? And so strength training, perfect back scratcher to GLP-1s, which aren't going anywhere. So it's just things for people in the fitness industry to think about, right? So I think overall awareness, to your point, whether it's politically charged or not, is a really good sign. So yes, whether any real policy will make a difference, as you know, Eric, it's hard to say, man. You got big pharma, big ag, all these powerful lobbying, organizations. They're hard to overcome. And who knows if this sort of idea sticks in the next administration or the next one. I certainly hope so. I know you do as well. But I think it's a good thing. So far, so good. It's really hard to predict whether this will stick, whether we can overcome the lobbying power of these big organizations that, quite honestly, it doesn't benefit them financially to move in this direction. So I don't know. I like it because just a general consumer awareness of their health and wellness, their regular doctors are talking about it now, right? You go to if you're female, you go to the OB and they're telling you, listen to this podcast, you need to lift weights, right? It's like, that is not something that we've seen historically. So I think all of it is good, but as far as the stickiness of it long-term on a policy making side, I have no idea. But as it stands, if you're in the fitness business, you should be paying attention to it. And do you align with what's currently happening, whether you like it or not, right? Because it's not going anywhere.
That's a great message. And I think if people are listening and maybe they're, not to offend you if you're clutching your pearls a little bit about the politics of it all and wondering, I would say, look at the bigger picture. Think about the health of our youth, especially, right? I think we can all agree, right? The kids deserve better, right? They deserve better foods, better initiation into exercise and movement, sport, whatever it may be. They deserve healthier lives than what we're providing them right now. So think about the kids, let go of your political thoughts and affiliations and, kind of go forward cautiously, but optimistically about what the opportunities are as this whole thing, evolves and comes about. So let that go,
what do you see, Eric? That's an overreaching message. Obviously it's, you're in lots of your tentacles are in lots of different areas of the industry, and you're strong in the technology side. You always have something new to tell me about. Obviously, you understand franchising, you understand big box fitness. What do you think about what's happening right now politically and from a policy standpoint?
I'm super excited.
What do you think is going to happen?
I'm super excited. I think it's all out of my 17, I haven't been in the industry as long as you have, but I've been in for long enough, 17, 18 years now. And this is the most optimistic I've been about the industry overall and our opportunities to really start to make a headway into healthcare. I interviewed Dr. Gloria Winters from YMCA, and she's a chief health officer. YMCA has a chief health officer. Just that title alone says a lot. And she's looking well, how do we become the forefront of healthcare? Digital health and data, and that's the base of it. And it was really interesting. This is a great framework. And just the fact that that's happening now is something we talked about for years. And on the GLP-1 front, I'm optimistic, but I'm also waiting for stuff that's more than anecdotal to tell me that this is actually driving people into gyms. I think people are losing weight, right? People are losing weight. I've just seen enough to see if someone can take a pill to do things that would accomplish what they thought would have been hard work in the gym. Are they now going to take the pill and be like, now's the time to go into the gym? Now, I know a lot of people are anecdotally saying, yes, people are coming in the gym who have been on GLP-1s who have not typically been on, been in the gym before. So I don't know that I'm a little like, let's pump the brakes and just wait and see how it goes. But I think to your point, Greg, it's like, be open to it, right? Be acknowledging that 1 in 8 Americans have done a GLP-1, and, how do we open our doors, be more, welcoming and be more understanding of where they're at, and how do we adapt things to kind of inch them into a healthier lifestyle. So overall, I'm super excited, man. I mean, I know I'm going to be at the Athletech event in June, and some of the speakers lined up for that already are like, this is like heavily like into like politics. Like we're integrating into the political system now. And that's got to be, hopefully, I mean, it's better than what we've done before. I mean, God bless people who have tried
I was about to say,
God bless people who have pushed the FIT Act for the last 2 decades, but it hasn't got through, and I think now it's like, okay, we can actually do something. So that's my overall take. I'm typically pretty positive.
You talk about the GLP-1s. I mean, one of our strategies for our in-market location. So if you own an Alloy location, one of your strategic B2B relationships would be with some med spas in the area, which in the areas that we go into, which are typically wealthy suburbs, those are plentiful, right? Whether they're privately owned or franchised or what have you. But it's a good back scratcher for us because most of those places they're not going to not prescribe and certainly get you a GLP-1 because that's their business model if you say you're not going to do anything else. But they are very open and they are suggesting, hey, you do need to do some strength training to mitigate the muscle loss that's going to happen with this rapid weight loss, right? So those are good back scratching, alliances or partnerships in local communities for our locations. So for us, we have seen a decent amount of adoption from people doing GLP-1s, and that will be the catalyst for them to then join an Alloy. Whereas in the past to you, and I think the scarcity mindset and logically almost could tell you people hire a personal trainer to what? Lose weight typically, right? Well, this other thing is doing that. But to your point with the landscape changing where people are looking at their overall wellness, right? Food quality, not just calories. Again, what do I do if I'm going to exercise? There's not a person out there who thinks exercise is bad for you. So it's like, what do I do? Right. I think we're going to see the consumer become a lot more savvy to what's happening out there. And so for us, it has been a positive, and it's the GLP-1s driving people to the membership at, like, say, an Alloy as an example. Maybe not so much in like a HIIT franchise where it's just about calorie burning, because they're like, well, I don't need that. I'm barely eating as it is, right? So you got to be thinking about, if you're in the fitness space, like, that's here to stay. What is your message, right? Because that message is going to fall flat to this 1 out of 8 people that you mentioned.
Yeah, amazing. Well, Rick, I think that's a great optimistic tale there to the interview. So let's leave it at that. If people want to get a hold of you, or if there's anything you need from the audience right now, what would you like to hear from them about? Yeah, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, just alloyfranchise.com or alloypersonaltraining.com. It's a consumer and or franchise site. And then, you can find me everywhere on social media. Just look me up, hit me up. If you have ideas or thoughts around this, I would love to hear them. Quite honestly, I know you would as well. So leave comment on the video, leave comment on the podcast, on this episode. I would love to know what the fitness professionals that are listening, even at a higher level, some of the executives that are running these big fitness brands, like, what are your thoughts on what it is that we're talking about? So I'd love to learn.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Rick, we'll be talking. We'll get you on another year, and congratulations again on all the success, man. It's awesome to see. It's, I think you're one of the truly the good guys in the industry, and it's great to see you being successful. So job well done. Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Mayo.